What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to the show. As always, thank you for tuning in. We have a lot to get into. I wanted to start the show out with this shocking article called Payback. The Biden administration and the federal government are flying illegal immigrants into the country, more notably into Texas and Florida. And so the title of the article says it all. Is this payback for the red state governors, Abbott and DeSantis, shipping illegal immigrants into sanctuary cities? But I'm telling you, folks, the numbers are going to shock you. And what's even more shocking is how secretive they are during this covert operation. This is no doubt a covert operation to fly illegal immigrants into our country, dropping them off in red states. That's it. That is what's going on. And so I want to talk about that. I got an article I want to get into. We have a lot to get into, folks. Next, after that, I want to get into a ruling a judge made about 5 days ago, and I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it, but it is a pretty significant ruling in Pennsylvania. A judge ruled that dates must be on the return ballot envelopes in this upcoming election. This is, obviously something the Democrats were fighting against and the Republicans were fighting for, and an appellate court finally made its decision. And so this is definitely going to have serious implications in the 2024 election. I would say a pretty big win for Republicans. So we're going to get into that. And then lastly, on a lighter note, I want to talk about this solar eclipse that's coming on the 8th of April. For some of us, it's going to be a total solar eclipse, and then for the rest of us, it's going to be a partial eclipse. Man, I can't talk. I got to get warmed up here. So, and then I'll probably get into a few more topics in between. You know how we do it on the show. We kind of just go with the flow here. So, depending on the flow of the show, we got a lot to get into, but I do want to touch down on those 3 topics because I think these are the most important events happening today. Stuff you need to hear, and I think you should know, especially this covert operation that's flying illegal immigrants into the country. This is mind-blowing. So we got a lot to get into. If you want to support the podcast, please download the podcast on all podcast platforms. If you want to go to Apple or Spotify, just go to the search bar, type in my name, Steven Torriello, and you should find my podcast. Download it, and then also leave a 5-star review. That actually really helps. And then most of all, what helps out the most is just sharing the content, sharing the episode. That helps out tremendously because, as you've probably already guessed, they don't toss this show around in the algorithm very much. So sharing the show with your friends and family certainly helps. And if you want to follow the show, you can follow the show on Rumble. And if you want to get a hold of me directly, you can get a hold of me at steventorrielloshow@gmail.com. So, without further ado, we got a lot to get into. As always, thank you for tuning in, and let's do this.
You're listening to The Steven Torriello Show, building a platform of liberty for people in search of truth with a dash of hope and a life worth living. The Steven Torriello Show. And now, here's Steven.
All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, do you get free plane tickets? Do you get free flights wherever you want to go? What if you went to the Biden administration, was like, hey, I sure could use a plane ticket to, like, Paris. You think you could spot me? What do you think they're going to tell you? Ink. I mean, you're living in a first world country when you have a government that actually flies illegal immigrants into your country. And I have to ask, are they getting first-class tickets? I mean, what is it? Is it coach? Is it economy? I mean, could you imagine if these illegal immigrants are getting first-class seats into the United States? I mean, the absolute brazenness from these people is mind-blowing. Not the illegal immigrants. I'm sure they're probably on cloud 9. They're like, oh my God, I cannot believe the United States is actually flying us into the country for free and first class. They probably get champagne, probably get some food. I mean, this is so wild, man. Crazy stuff. Absolutely nuts. This is a mind-blowing story from the Washington Examiner. This actually just came out today. It says payback, 90% of illegal immigrants in secret program flown to Florida and Texas. Payback is the perfect name for this article. So the Biden administration's program of secretly flying illegal immigrants directly from Latin America to U.S. cities dumps over 90% in hubs of 2 southern states governed by president's harshest border critics, according to government data. So that's going to be Governor Greg Abbott and Governor Ron DeSantis. As you know, that these 2 governors have been Joe Biden's biggest critic on the immigration crisis that the Biden administration created his first week in office. There's no doubt about it. The Biden administration created this border crisis. It is so crazy to me to hear the left-wing the media point the finger at Republicans and Donald Trump. I mean, it's like we're living in a George Orwell novel. It's like, wait a minute, no. Joe Biden came in and reversed all of Donald Trump's border policies. And then now you're going to blame Donald Trump and Republicans for the crisis that it created? I mean, this is how dumb they think the American people are. It's insane. I have no other words to describe it. It's just insane, folks. So get this number. You ready for this? Some 347,959 migrants allowed into the secretive system fly directly to airports in Florida and Texas, with Florida receiving the vast majority at 325,995, according to an analysis of U.S. Customs and Border Protection numbers by the Center for Immigration Studies. So the Center for Immigration Studies is actually the one that's been working on this story for like the last 6 months, and they've uncovered a lot. In the beginning, the Biden administration wouldn't even admit to this program even existing. And then with many, many FOIA requests and investigative reporting from actual credible journalists that do their job instead of political activists, they came up with this. So they at least narrowed it down to these flights going into Florida and Texas. And then that's got to blow people's mind. I mean, it's obvious that they're doing it on purpose. Because Florida and Texas are the only states, I think Arizona maybe, but Florida and Texas are the only ones shipping immigrants into these sanctuary cities. And so you have to wonder, is this payback from the Biden administration? And if it is, who's actually playing politics with immigrants' lives here? Because you remember that's what they accused Ron DeSantis of doing, right? When he sent the, 75 or 50 illegal immigrants into Martha's Vineyard, and they had them out like that. They were out within 24 hours, folks. 24 hours, they were out of Martha's Vineyard. I mean, the brazen hypocrisy of these people knows no bounds. The lack of self-awareness is astonishing to me. So, back to the article here. It is unclear how many of the immigrants fly into other U.S. cities, though the government has said there are over 40 final destinations. Quote, the early evidence suggests that a great many of these inadmissible alien passengers, probably a majority, initially land at international airports in Republican Governor Ron DeSantis' Florida, said CIS, which reported that the program has let in 386,000 people since October of 2022. Quote, in fact, Florida turns out to be the top landing and U.S. Customs processing zone for this direct flights parole and release program, tallying at nearly 326,000 of the initial arrivals from inception through February. That is nuts. Ladies and gentlemen, 386,000 people? How many flights is that? I mean, how many airplanes? Well, let's do this right now. Hey, Siri. How many passengers does a Boeing 747 carry?
The 747 can typically seat 366 passengers in 3 travel classes.
Okay,
This
so
is from simplifying.com.
all right. So 366 passengers. So what'd we say the total was? So 366 passengers. So that's going to be 386,000 divided by 366. Folks, that is over 1,000. It's 1,054 flights That is insane. And so while your flight is completely booked or you're stuck in layover in some weird state and you're having to deal with, overloaded planes, overloaded airports, I just want you to remember that the Biden administration has given away for free 1,054 flights, totaling 386,000 illegal immigrants flown into the country since October of 2022. That is mind-blowing numbers. Who's paying for all this? Well, we are, of course. I mean, this to me is shocking. 1,054 flights? I mean, holy crud. That's insane. And you hear it all the time. I mean, people I talk to that fly a lot, they say the airports are filled with illegal immigrants. You've seen the videos on social media where you got entire sections of the airport blocked off, where they have cots and sleeping bags for illegal immigrants inside the airport as like a staging ground. It's like our airports have turned into border zones. So when they say that every state and every city is a border state and a border city, they're not joking. Because these flights are taking these illegal immigrants, well, mainly to Texas and Florida. But remember, this is just what we know from investigative reporting. I mean, this isn't something the Biden administration has come out and admitted to. This is just something that the CIS has uncovered. 386,000 illegal immigrants flown into the country through this parolee program. I mean, where are they coming from? Are illegal immigrants just boarding planes in Mexico and then flying over the border into Texas and Florida? I mean, where are these planes coming from? This is the problem they're having. They don't know because the Biden administration will not tell them on grounds of national security. That's the excuse they're using. So the American taxpayer is flying illegal immigrants into the country, paying for their airfare, paying for their food, paying for the jet fuel, paying the airlines. How much money is the airlines making? I mean, they got to be making a killing on this because the government, they pay top dollar for everything they do. This is why they say a screwdriver for the federal government is like $5,000. So I guarantee the airlines are making some serious money. And we're paying for it. So think about that. This is why I say the American taxpayer, American citizens are paying for their own destruction. This is out of control, man. This goes above and beyond any rational reason behind flooding your own country with tens of millions of illegal immigrants. Not just at the southern border, but you're flying them in now? So you got immigrants coming in by sea from the flotillas that we heard of off the coast of Florida. You got illegal immigrants coming in across land at the southern border. And now you got illegal immigrants coming in by air. So air, land, and sea, we have illegal immigrants coming in by the hundreds of thousands. 1,054 flights. Wow. In-freaking-sane. So investigator Todd Bensman, this guy's great, said the program allows, quote, aspiring illegal border crossers from 9 Latin American countries to buy an airline ticket to fly directly to the city of their choice, where they are processed and let go. Quote, it begun in October 2022 for Venezuelans and expanded in January 2023 to Cubans, Haitians, Nicaraguans, and Colombians. The program approves flight travel authorizations for aspiring illegal border crossers still in other countries to instead arrange commercial airline passage for themselves over the southern border and then receive temporary but easily renewable humanitarian parole from CBP officers at the airport. Bensman said in his new report, one incentive to dissuade beneficiaries from illegal border crossings is that the parolee program comes with eligibility for renewable work permits. Bensman and CIS have been fighting with the administration for clear data on where the illegal immigrants end up, but the Department of Homeland Security has refused to cough up the information, citing security concerns. See? Bensman said state and local authorities should know what they are facing. Yeah, Ron DeSantis, let's go, dude. What are you doing, man? Like this, listen, and if he's doing it under the radar because he doesn't want to turn this into a media spectacle, I get it. But for 386,000 illegal immigrants to be flown into your state and not know it, this is wild. You essentially have states at war with the government because Governor Greg Abbott was going through the same thing at the southern border in Texas, where you had a real clash of powers at the southern border with the federal government and the state government of Texas with the razor wire, with the border fence. Essentially, Texas is like, listen, if the Biden administration is not going to secure a border, I have to secure my state's border. And so they had to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court ruled that the Biden administration could tear down the fence, but they didn't say anything about the governor putting up new fence. They just said that the Biden administration can tear down the fence if they want. And so Greg Abbott's been putting up fence all over the place. From what I just read a minute ago, the National Guard, the Texas National Guard, has officially retaken El Paso, which I guess was, where was it? I mean, was it overrun by illegal immigrants? What do they mean by have officially taken back El Paso, Texas? Like, it sounds like we're in a freaking war. Like we've gained ground back in El Paso. Like they're congratulating. They were able to put up barriers and climb-proof fences. Like this is nuts, folks. This illegal immigration situation is nuts. We've never seen anything like this. We've never seen a federal government purposely open up their borders and incentivize tens of millions of illegal immigrants to come into the country illegally by air, sea, and land. Never seen it in this country's 250-year history. Never. And not only that, but the ones that are coming in through the airport are getting work permits. And this explains a lot, folks, because I've been seeing a lot of Hispanic workers in this area. They're taking over all the jobs. I'm not even joking when I tell you this. I don't know if they're illegal or not. You know, of course, Democrats will say they're not illegal. But to me, someone that is an illegal immigrant is somebody that cuts in line. Somebody that evades the process, that doesn't go through the process that we have to get into this country legally, to become a citizen. That, to me, is somebody that came into this country illegally. They broke the law to get in here. The Biden administration can play semantics with the words by calling them parolees or work permissible immigrants, whatever you want to call it. But if they cut the line to get United States citizenship, that to me is an illegal alien. An illegal asylum seeker, somebody claiming asylum that's not a legit case of asylum. Like that to me is an illegal immigrant. And I'm telling you right now, I see it all over the place. This article actually explains a lot. They're not just cutting lawns, folks. You know, the Democrats want to sit there and say, oh, yeah, but who else is going to pick your food and cook your food and mow your lawns? First of all, I find that to be very degrading for any Hispanic person or anybody that's in this country to be delegated to cooking and picking your food, Democrats. But beyond that, it doesn't matter. They're here illegally taking jobs that Americans otherwise would be doing. And it's not just those three things. They want you to believe that. No. These illegal immigrants are now doing roofs. They're doing plumbing. They're doing carpentry. They're doing electrical. They're doing excavating. They're doing everything. So it's not just farming. It's not just cleaning your house. It's not just picking your food and cooking your food. No, they're doing everything. They are taking jobs away from Americans. And what this does is it drives down wages of hard-working American people. Because the owners of these companies would much rather pay somebody that's going to work for pennies on the dollar than hire an American. Ron DeSantis better get on this. And supposedly there was this program, this bill that Ron DeSantis signed into law, the E-Authorize, which means that any employer has to verify that their employees are indeed legal immigrants, citizens allowed to work here, either through work permits or other means. This E-Verify, something that the House Senate put, or the HR2 bill that the Republicans passed in the House has in it, E-Verify. But whatever they're doing, they're finding loopholes around this because I'm seeing it everywhere. There's actually a story about 2 weeks ago, maybe about 3 weeks ago. There was a dad and his two sons. He owned a painting business. I forget the name of it. It's something and Sons, one of those things. It was a family business, a painter. And there's this huge development going in about maybe 2 miles from my house, a 55 and older community. I drive past it every day. It's the cookie cutter homes that we all see. They erect them like one a day. They're putting up like one house a day. And, I talk to the guy and the two kids almost every morning because they go in the same time I do and I go and get my coffee, the everyday routine. We see each other, if not every day, at least 3 times a week. And, I talk to him and he says he's got a contract for about 10 houses in this development. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool, And he was there for a good solid year. So one day I come in and we're talking. He's like, yeah, we're on our last house. We just finished it. And then I just put in a bid for a new contract for 20 more houses or 10 more houses or something like that. I can't remember the exact number. And I'm like, oh, that's awesome. So I'll probably be seeing you around for another year or so, right? He's like, yep. And then about a week later, I started thinking, I haven't seen him. I haven't seen him or his sons. And I'm like, this is weird. And about 3 months goes by, and I see him at the gas station again. I see him in the morning. We're getting our coffee like normal. I'm like, dude, where you been, man? He's like, oh, yeah, we didn't get that contract down the street. I'm like, really? Why not? I mean, to me, it seemed like it's a no-brainer. It's you and your two kids. He's like, yeah, because they found somebody cheaper. Somebody underbid me. Somebody underbid the job. I'm like, really? He was like, yeah, and what they bid was just, I couldn't do it. I could not beat their bid. And about maybe a few days after that, I seen a van full of Hispanic men, young Hispanic men. Now, I don't know if they're the ones that got the contract. I don't know. But what I do know is they pulled into that same exact development where they're building the houses. They were painters. Obviously, you can tell who a painter is because they wear clothes that have paint all over them. There was about 15 of them in one van. And they were all in there in the morning, the same time that the guy normally would go there. They're getting their coffee and their empanadas and their, whatever it is they get in the morning. They get beer. Like they're buying beer at like 7:30 in the morning. And they're always paying in cash. Always. That is like a dead giveaway. They pay in cash all the time because it's obvious, folks. They don't have a bank account. And they're getting paid in cash. And so a few days goes by and I finally put it together. When I seen the van pull into that development, I'm like, that explains it. These are the people that underbid that guy, the painter, and his two kids. And so this is what's happening all across the country, folks. It's not just this painter and his two kids. This is happening, and I'm hearing it from anybody. I'm hearing it from everybody that's in construction. They're being underbid by these illegal immigrants. Because what's happening is you'll have an owner that licensed the company, whether it's painting or carpentry or whatever it is, roofing. And so you have the owner, right? And then somehow there's a loophole. And this owner is hiring these illegal immigrants for pennies on the dollar, paying them in cash. And they're getting all these bids. And so what happens? Now this father and his two kids, probably have to go find another job somewhere else. Probably for maybe they're making the same amount of money. But this is what's happening all across the country. I talked to my cousin. Same thing's happening with him. And he does drywall. They're being outbid by illegal immigrants that are taking these jobs for pennies on the dollar. Because there's without a doubt they work hard. I mean, they do have good work ethics. I mean, they got that going for them. But the problem is, as American business owners, or American small business owners or small construction companies can't keep up with a company that hires illegal immigrants for pennies on the dollar and pays them in cash. You just can't keep up with that. And so all these Americans are losing their jobs. They're losing their painting gigs or their carpentry gigs or their roofing gigs or their drywall gigs. This is what's happening all across the country. I've seen it here in Florida. So this is a story, just as my personal experience that I just really recognized, I really just kind of put together just within the last month or two. But this is what's happening. You know, and and it's on purpose. It's on purpose. And so for the Biden administration to be flying in 386,000 illegal immigrants into the states of Florida and Texas, where are they going to go, folks? Where are they working? They got to be going somewhere. They have to be sleeping somewhere. This administration has created such a freaking mess on the southern border. So just to finish this article, I know I kind of went on a rant forever there. Quote, public knowledge of where these flights deliver migrants should matter to local, state, and national leaders in cities struggling with migrant influxes who could use the information to financially plan for their care or petition the federal government to stop the flights, he said. The information may also hold implications for litigation by Texas, Florida, and other states that have sued to stop the parolee programs on grounds that the administration's illegal abuse of the narrow statutory parole authority has directly harmed them. The administration has refused to work with Texas or Florida on the surge of illegal immigrants entering the states. DeSantis and Governor Greg Abbott have bused and flown some of the illegal immigrants to northern sanctuary cities, governed by liberal mayors including Chicago, Boston, and New York City. So that's what this is. This is payback. So the Biden administration seen what Ron DeSantis and Greg Abbott have been doing, and they're like, oh yeah, rubbing their hands together. This was like a hold my beer moment for the Biden administration. Like, oh, you're gonna ship 50 people to Martha's Vineyard? Watch this. Hold my beer. I'm gonna fly 386,000 illegal immigrants into your state. This is what's going on, man. And this is so damaging to a country. No other country would do this to themselves. And this is why this is the number one issue on voters' minds. It's on every single poll, is immigration. Because the American people are not dumb. They know that this is harmful to a country. They know this is harmful to a society. Listen, 500,000, 1 million illegal immigrants. Okay, we do that. We've been doing that every year during normal years, you know, where we would actually vet the illegal immigrants coming in. But this is nuts. They're not going to assimilate. It's going to overwhelm the schools. It's going to outcompete American workers for jobs. And you're seeing that. I just explained to you, I just told you the story of my own personal experience from somebody that I know. 2 people that I know, actually. So this is happening. This is a real thing that's actually happening. And they say by the end of the Biden administration, 15 million illegal immigrants are going to be in the United States. Could you imagine another 4 years of the Biden administration? You're talking about 30 to 35 million illegal immigrants. Folks, there's 350, 370 million people in this country. But this is what we got to deal with. So just remember this. Remember this when you go to the voting booth in November. This is how you destroy a country. It's mind-blowingly shocking to me how the Biden administration will not reveal the locations of these destinations that they're flying these illegal immigrants into on the grounds of national security. But yet, how vetted do you think these people are that they're flying in? They can't possibly have IDs. I find it so breathtakingly stupid to deny information to American citizens about where the government is flying illegal immigrants on the grounds of national security, when you have a federal government opening the southern border, allowing tens of millions of illegal immigrants to flood in this country, unvetted, with millions of gotaways that we don't know who they are, where they're from, what they want, what they're doing. And mark my words, if we have to go through another 4 years of this, it is not a matter of if a terrorist attack is going to happen on American soil by bad actors. It's when. It is just a matter of time. The FBI, Chris Wray told us this. Every single national intelligence official, honest one anyways, that's not part of the Biden administration, has said that there are most definitely terrorists coming into this country. Because why wouldn't you? If you were the president of China, if you were a communist dictator like Xi, or if you were a terrorist leader like of Hamas, say you were a terrorist leader of Hamas or Russia, wouldn't now be the best time to take advantage of the United States by slowly creeping in some of your best soldiers undercover? Like, if you're going to send in groups or sleeper cells of terrorists into this country, now is the time to do it. Because you have an administration that is allowing tens of millions to get in here. And if you think about it, 15 million, you just take a fraction of a percent. Say if just 0.1% of that 15 million, it's not a lot on paper, but if you think about it, what is that? 1,000? 2,000 extremely dangerous people? This is what's happening to our country by the Biden administration. And if people do not go vote in November to change the direction of this country, to change the course this country is heading, then I don't know what's going to be left. But it's not going to be a country you recognize. I can guarantee that. And so, speaking of voting, I know I went on an extremely long rant there. I didn't really actually plan on telling that story, but I mean, it just fit in perfectly because I was thinking about this when I was reading the story. It explained exactly why I'm seeing all these young Hispanic males all over the place in Florida on every single job, whatever it is, landscaping, roofing, plumbing, drywalling, painting. They're everywhere. Our entire construction system is going to be made up with illegal immigrants. And so where are all these American workers going? You mean to tell me there's no American drywallers out there that need a job? There's no American roofers out there? There's no American painters out there? Of course there is. But they're getting outbid by workers that'll work for pennies on the dollar. This is the problem. But again, Democrats don't think about these things. They don't even ask themselves the question, and then what? They're just like, open it up. America needs to pay for its mistakes of the past. This is their thinking, man. This is how these people think. That America was so systematically racist, America was so bad that it must pay for its evils. And one of the ways it can pay for its evils in the past are by opening the borders to anyone and everyone that wants to come in here. We're all immigrants. You hear them say this all the time. We're all immigrants at one point. Yeah, that was before 1911 when we had Social Security. Okay, that was before we had welfare. It's one thing to have free migration to jobs. It's another thing to have free migration to welfare. And you can't have both. We heard this from Milton Friedman. The great Milton Friedman said, you can have a welfare state or you can have free migration, but you can't have both. And pre-1911 or pre-1914, whatever the date was, that was fine because they were coming here to work, everybody benefited. But the moment you start welfare and you add this pot that everybody's forced to pay into, then that changes everything when you have people coming in that are not paying into the pot. This is why you have American citizens paying $500 billion a year for the crisis that the Biden administration created at the southern border. And people don't like it, man. They're sick and tired of this stuff. They're not dumb. They know what's going on. They know this is unsustainable. You can't sustain a system like this. No country can handle this. This is a republic-ending tactic here. This will destroy the United States of America if it continues. There is no doubt about it. So that leads me to believe that this administration purposely wants to destroy America. There's no other reason behind this. You can't You cannot get to a logical conclusion as to why a federal government would open its borders up and flood its own country with tens of millions of illegal immigrants when you have a welfare system, when you have all these things in place that are set there in place for the American citizens, and you just bring in tens of millions of non-citizens. You can't. It's unsustainable. Everybody knows this. This is why this is top of mind for American voters. We see it on every single poll. The American people know that this is destructive to our country. They see it, and they don't want anything to do with it. But yet the Biden administration is doubling down, not just processing them in at the southern border. No. Now he's got them flying in on airplanes. So now we got flotillas out in the sea, planes in the air, and boots on the ground, flooding illegal immigrants into this country by air, land, and sea. My God, I can't think of anything more destructive. I mean, one could say that the Biden administration is purposely trying to destroy this country. And then if that's the case, then wouldn't that make Joe Biden a traitor to this country? Wouldn't that kind of be like treasonous? To purposely try and destroy your own country? You swore an oath to protect this country. And yet you're doing the exact opposite. I don't know about you, but I call that treason. It's not a word I like to use a lot. Anyways, going in, let's finish this up real quick. I went on way too long on that piece. So let me get into this. Let me get into this ballot piece here. So here's an article from the State of the Union. Appeals court makes major ruling on mail-in ballots ahead of 2024 presidential election. A federal appeals court ruled that mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania without accurate handwritten dates on envelopes are invalid, overturning a previous decision. Under state law, mail-in voters must write the date on envelopes to make their vote effective. The ruling will impact this year's election in important swing state of Pennsylvania. Quote, the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania unanimously held this ballot casting rule is mandatory. Thus, failure to comply renders a ballot invalid under Pennsylvania law, Judge Thomas Ambrose wrote. Republicans say that the mail-in process raises integrity issues, while Democrats argue it increases access and convenience. We don't need better access or convenience. I'm sorry. If you can't get off your ass and go vote once every 4 years or once every couple of years, then I'm sorry. But making things easier and more convenient, you're going to get a freaking disaster. And that's exactly why our elections are so effed up, is because Democrats want to make voting a convenience. I'm sorry. I don't want it to be a convenient thing to do. I want people to have the drive. I don't want voting to be convenient. All right? I mean, next thing you know, Democrats, this is what they want, and I'm telling you, they want people voting from their phone. This is what they want, because this is how they think, man. The way that Democrats think when it comes to voting is so dangerous. And everything that they do is dangerous. What if Democrats got everything they wanted? What if Democrats had the White House, the House, and the Senate, and the Supreme Court? What would this country look like right now? Think about that. You'd be paying for massive student loan debt relief. You'd be having, well, you have open borders right now. You'd be having on-demand abortion. The filibuster would be gone. The Supreme Courts would be packed. I mean, think of what this country would look like if Democrats got everything they wanted. It would look like a freaking disaster. Forget elections. Forget about elections. I mean, they wouldn't even be elections. It would be like some third world banana republic stuff. I mean, people wouldn't even go vote because they know their vote wouldn't even count, because the Democrats ruined our election process so much. And that's what people think now. People don't want to vote now because they think their vote doesn't count. This is what Democrats have done to our election system. They have effed up our election process and therefore have suppressed people's votes by completely destroying our election process. People don't even want to go vote now because they think their vote's not going to count. And I don't blame them. How do we know? You have some states that can't even conduct an audit after the election. Other states threw out their envelopes that the ballots came in. You have some states that have no excuse mail-in voting. Everybody and anybody can mail in their ballot. I mean, You have, what is it, month-long elections now? So we don't have election day anymore? Like, this is what's happened to our election system. Our democratic process, you know, the sacred process that Democrats claim to be the defenders of and the protectors of. These people don't want democracy. Every time they say democracy, oh, it's a threat to democracy, or he's a threat to democracy. What they mean to say is the Democratic Party. And I think Charlie Kirk said this, the oligarchy. That's what they actually mean. So every time they say democracy, just replace it with the word the Democratic Party. They want a one-party nation. They want a one-party state. They want the country really to look like California. That's what they want. Our country, if the Democrats, this is how to kind of put it in a nutshell. If Democrats got everything they wanted, this entire country would look like California. All right? Because California was once a beautiful, prospering state that everybody wanted to be at. And now look, after what, 3 decades of Democrat rule, complete Democrat rule, you have Democrat legislators all across the board, a supermajority, a Democrat governor, Democrat mayors all over the state. And look at California. There has to be a balance. You know, Democrats don't want balance. There must be a balance. Democrats want one-party state. They want a one-party country where when you go vote, if you're a Republican, it doesn't even matter. This is how it is in California. Republicans don't even want to go vote in California because they know it doesn't matter. This is what Democrats want. And so to kind of put it in a nutshell, Democrats want the whole country to look like California. There you go. So anyways, this is a big ruling in Pennsylvania. The Democrats are far more likely than Republicans to vote by mail in Pennsylvania. This we know, and this is why Democrats are fighting for no excuse mail-in voting all over the state of Pennsylvania, and really, frankly, all over the country. This is what they did months and weeks before the 2020 election. They changed election laws with the stupid mass mail-in balloting stuff that completely ruined our elections. And so now Republicans have to fight with one arm behind their back and blindfolded in order to and pray to God that they win so that they can go in and change these election laws back to where people actually have faith in our election process. Because right now, there is no faith in the process. So no matter what you do, no matter who wins, no one's going to have faith that that person actually won. Okay? This is how dangerous Democrats are to democracy, right? So who are the real threats to democracy here? So and take this election, perfect example. Who in 2024, if Joe Biden wins, is anybody going to say that that was a free and fair election? When you have all the lawfare being used against Republicans' candidate, when you have all the persecution against the Republicans' nominee, when you have all the law changes in these blue states, who in 2024, if Joe Biden wins, is going to accept that as a free and fair election? Nobody. And who's going to accept that election if Donald Trump wins? Nobody. So this is what we have. You have a system now that nobody trusts because there's no integrity. Because Democrats ruined it, just like they ruin everything they touch. I'm sorry, man. I cannot believe, talking to you right now, I cannot believe I used to be a Democrat. I can't believe it, man. And listen, I know the party's changed, but, you know, we used to support this stuff when I was a Democrat. So it's, you know, I honestly feel bad that I voted Democrat. I voted for Obama. I really do. The first time. I didn't vote the second time. You all know that. So it's, you know, it's very scary, man. And again, Democrats don't even really think about this because all they think about is just trying to get power. Because once they get power, it's a zero-sum game. It is they are leaving nothing on the field because it'll be just like California. Republicans will never win another election again. Which you could also say is the motive behind sending these 386,000 illegal immigrants into Texas and Florida. There's a motive behind this, folks. I'm telling you. There's a reason why this administration is flooding this country with illegal immigrants. And so for the people out there calling us conspiracy theorists for bringing up the Great Replacement theory, I'm sorry. It's not a theory anymore. This is actually happening. And they admit it openly, on air, on TV. They'll say it. Like, oh, well, the illegal immigrants, they're hard workers. They're going to help the economy. It's like, wait a minute. What? So you're just essentially admitting to the replacement theory. Okay. So big ruling out of Pennsylvania. So the RNC chair said the ruling is a victory for integrity, while civil rights groups argue it could disenfranchise thousands of eligible voters over trivial errors. What do you mean? Are Democrats trying to say people don't know how to write down the date? I mean, my God, man. This is why I say Democrats, they are the racists. Because what the first thing they'll say is black and minority communities their votes will be suppressed because they had to put dates on their ballot. So in reality, Democrats really truly believe that the black minority communities can't put dates on a ballot. This is the same argument with voter ID. As if black people can't get IDs. As if black people aren't smart enough to go get IDs. I mean, it's so freaking racist. It's so shockingly racist. And the Democrats can't even see it. But they honestly, this is why they lash out and call everybody else white supremacists and racist and all this other stuff, because it's guilt. They feel guilty for how they think about black minorities and people that don't look like them. It's 100% pure projection. That's what it is. And that is truly what I believe. I think they feel guilt, right? They feel guilty for feeling the way that they do about anybody that doesn't look like them. And so therefore they lash out and project onto others how they actually feel. The black Americans can't get IDs, that black Americans can't write the date on their ballot envelopes. This is how they think about their fellow Americans. Now, I granted, some of them just say it because they want to be able to take advantage of the voting process. But I think the people that a very large majority actually do feel that way. Like, oh, the black community, you can't create a law that demands ID to go vote. What are the black people going to do? It's like, what? These people are nuts, man. They're so racist. But again, it comes from something much deeper. It comes from their own personal guilt that they have. Quote, this is a crucial victory for election integrity, voter confidence in Keystone State and nationwide, Republican National Committee Chair Michael Whatley stated. Pennsylvanians deserve to feel confident in the security of their mail ballots, and this Third Circuit ruling roundly rejects unlawful left-wing attempts to count undated or incorrectly dated mail-in ballots. If this ruling stands, thousands of Pennsylvania voters could lose their vote over a meaningless paperwork error, Pennsylvania ACLU Executive Director Mike Lee said. The ballots in question in this case came from voters who are eligible and who met the submission deadline. In passing the Civil Rights Act, Congress put a guardrail in place to be sure that states don't erect unnecessary barriers that disenfranchise voters. It's unfortunate that the court failed to recognize that principle, he said. In 2022, over 7,600 mailed ballots were rejected due to missing or incorrect envelope dates in 12 counties. But here's the problem. Would you rather have 7,600 mailed ballots being rejected due to missing or incorrect envelope dates? Or would you rather have elections completely destroyed and no faith, trust, or credibility because you don't have the correct dates and envelopes? You have no way of proving that that's a valid ballot from a legal voter. So to me, it's a lot better for 7,000 ballots to be rejected for the integrity of our elections, for people to have faith in our elections. Because trust me, when people don't have faith in their elections, you're going to be losing a lot more than 7,000 ballots. You're going to be losing millions because you're going to be disenfranchising millions of voters. I feel as if not upholding election integrity is disenfranchising voters. Because when people don't believe their vote counts, or when there's cheating, or when there's no faith in the electoral process, then that to me is disenfranchising voters because they won't go vote. So it's better for 7,000 mailed ballots to be rejected than millions of ballots to not even be cast because they don't feel like their vote's going to count anyways. That to me is more important. So again, Democrats don't think this deep about stuff. Everything's about, the here, the now. They never ask the question and then what. They can never look down the line. So this is where we're at. So in actuality, I think there was the least amount of rejected ballots in the 2020 election than ever in U.S. history. So they lowered the signature verification threshold in states like Georgia. And they you can literally just scribble on a ballot and they would pass it. And I get that to a point because when I go vote, they give you that little digital keypad to write your signature. That looks nothing like my signature in real life. But then again, what they're not matching it to your signature in real life with pen and paper. They're matching it to your signature you have at the BMV when you go get your ID. And so that, too, is a digital keypad. But to me, it seems like each one is different. They flow different. I've had some that work really good, but I have others that are just so slow and so pixelated that it doesn't even look like my signature. So I get some of the arguments here. But again, everybody, you need to at least try to verify. I don't think somebody should be able to just scribble put a little squiggly line on the ballot and say, okay, that's a signature. No, I'm sorry. But that's what was happening in the 2020 election. I mean, you had the rejection rate was so low, the threshold was so low compared to previous elections. So they lowered the threshold because more people were voting by mail. Get rid of the mail-in voting, period. The whole thing needs to go, the whole system. Paper ballots, one-day voting. That's it. This is the only way you're going to have integrity in our elections is if paper ballots, count by hand, one-day voting. But somehow we went from election day to election month with mass mail-in ballots, no signature verification, no dates, no stamp, no time stamp, no post date. Like, what the hell is going on here? It's like it's like whatever. They just threw it all up in the air and they said, screw it. We're just going to take everything. And that's how they feel. They feel like every ballot should count, not every legal ballot. And that is the Democrats' outlook on this. And that stems from them believing that anybody that's here in the States, whether they're legal or not, should be able to have a say-so in how our system's governed. And I'm sorry, but that's not what the framers had in mind when they set up an election process. That's not how elections work. You got to actually be a citizen to vote in the electoral process, to be part of the democratic process, right? To determine how you're governed. People voting should have knowledge on how the system works. They should have knowledge on the country's history. They should have knowledge about the laws and what they're voting for, who they're voting for. Not just anybody that's here and says, okay, which party's giving away free stuff? All right, that's the party I'm voting for. You see how things could get a little messed up? Yeah. All right, so last but not least, I want to get onto this last story. We got so much stuff to get into, but I burned up way too much time in that beginning article, man, on that first topic. That was my fault. All right, so to get into the solar eclipse, I got an article here, sciencenews.org. Why the 2024 total solar eclipse will be such a big deal. So solar eclipses are dramatic events as a rule, but the total eclipse coming on April 8th is going to ratchet up the experience. Compared with the last total eclipse that crossed the United States in 2017, this year's total eclipse will last longer. The sky will fall darker, and the sun itself will put on a much livelier show. And millions more people will be able to step outside their front doors to see one of the most astounding astronomical events of their lives. They truly are incredible. I think they're awesome. I love seeing this stuff. Again, because I love astronomy. I told you I like cosmology, astrophysics, history. I love science. I would probably say space and science is like my go-to stuff. Space and science, and then after that would probably be history, and more notably U.S. history. Not so much world history, because then it starts getting complex. You get into the Roman time, start getting into Latin, but I am definitely a huge fan of space, man. I love it. I watch videos every night when I go to bed. I put on, YouTube videos, like the real long ones, like 3-hour videos, and I go to sleep to it because it soothes me. I love hearing about space and black holes and secret planets and constellations and galaxies. I love it. So I fall asleep to it every night, man. All right, so it will also be the last major eclipse to cross North America for 20 years. All of that means that it's an especially rare opportunity for casual observers and scientists alike. Here are a few things to know about this spectacular event. Why will this eclipse last longer and feature a more active sun? The moon will be at a point in its orbit that's comparatively close to Earth in April, making the moon appear particularly large. As a result, for anyone fortunate enough to make it to the path of totality, where the moon completely blocks out the sun's disk, it will be an especially dark eclipse that will last nearly 4.5 minutes. That's almost 2 minutes longer than the Great American Eclipse back in 2017. What's more, the sun will be close to solar maximum in 2024. That's the peak of its roughly 11-year activity cycle. As a result, lots of bright, petal-like streamers of plasma will extend from the solar corona and the sun's outer atmosphere. The increase in solar activity also ups the chances of a coronal mass ejection, a large puff of hot gas trapped in a loop of magnetic field that's blasted away from the sun's surface. I know it sounds, and the sun kind of looks small in comparison in the sky. It looks small to us. And one of these coronal mass ejections, it looks small on the sun, but one of these whips, when you look at like short videos of the sun and you see one of these flaming whips that come out, that's a coronal mass ejection. You can fit like 10 Earths inside one of those things. Like, these things aren't small. They are massive. They are so big that it could mess up our satellites here on Earth, in our satellites that are orbiting the Earth. Like, these mass ejections, they push like insane amounts of radiation and charged particles into our atmosphere. And this is where you get the northern lights, or what is it called? The Aurora Borealis up in the Alaska area at the poles, because the northern lights is what we call them. And so charged particles come from the sun, and they hit the atmosphere, and the Earth's magnetic field, that's what creates all the colors, because it's the magnetic field that's rejecting the charged particles. We're like in a giant cocoon of magnetism. That's what protects us, and that's what makes this planet so rare. When people look at Earth, and you go down the list of the reason why there's life on this planet, the chances of other planets having the perfect rotation, having the perfect magnetic field, having a magneto to begin with, which is a molten core that is circulating, creating the magnetic field. When you have large gas planets like Jupiter protecting the Earth from massive, extinction level asteroids, like everything is so perfect for planet Earth, which is the reason why it's been so stable for 4 billion years, long enough to keep life. This is why I think, that life on another planet it's going to be pretty rare. Regardless of the trillions or quadrillions of planets out there in the universe, that in the observable universe, the chances of there being life on a planet, or having a planet that has all those check marks, like a magnetic field, the rotation, the gravity, like everything's got to be so perfect. The timing, the location, even Pluto has an impact on Earth in a way. Like, everything has its job in the solar system, and a planet, in order for it to have life, must have the same setup. So that's why I think life on another planet, I'm not going to say impossible, but I don't think it's going to be as likely as some people may think. But there's trillions upon trillions upon trillions of planets out there. So, if just mathematically, there has to be at least one other planet with life. So I am a firm believer that there are planets out there with life. There's no doubt. But it's not as common as people would think. All right, anyways, So on the 8th, you're going to get a total solar eclipse. Some of you, more notably my listeners in Indiana, that is, I am from Indiana, so that's the reason why I mention it. But there is a map. It's going to be going across, it will enter North America in western Mexico around 12 p.m. Mountain Time. It will cross the United States and exit through southeastern Canada around 5:15 p.m. So it's going to come up through Mexico, through Texas. It looks like, through southern Illinois, almost right all the way through Indiana. It's almost the entire width of Indiana. So this thing's like 2,000 miles wide. But yeah, it goes right from the Mexico all the way up to the east coast of Canada. Pretty cool. For my listeners in Indiana, you are going to be getting the whole show, man. But if I was there, I would definitely be keeping an eye out for the coronal mass ejection, because it's a very likely there's a very likely chance that you'll see one, because we're in the high activity stage of the sun. So right now the solar maximum is the cycle. So I would definitely be looking out for that. The solar maximum, it's gonna be a high likelihood that you'll see something cool coming from around the edge. You know, a solar eclipse is really the only time you'll ever get to see the sun's outer atmosphere. And of course, you know, you're gonna have all the European Space Agency solar orbiter, and then you're gonna have NASA's Parker Solar Probe is going to be looking at this thing too, which for the first time, by the way, both of these orbiters, these orbiters that are orbiting the sun, studying it, haven't been up there long enough. And so this will be its first full eclipse for these solar orbiters as well. The Parker Solar Probe is one insane feat of engineering. This thing, it's the fastest man-made object in space. And so this thing is doing long orbits around the sun. And on its closest approach, and each time it orbits the sun, it gets closer and closer and closer. And it has this massive heat shield, one-of-a-time invention. It was engineered by NASA. It's this giant panel. And then all the instruments and the satellite itself sits behind this giant heat shield. And when this thing gets close to the sun, I mean, it just heats up, I think, to like 3,000 degrees or something insane temperature. It glows bright red when it's at its closest descent, and then it'll whip back out into space and kind of cool off. And then, but every time it does one of these orbits, it gets closer and closer and closer. And so right now, it's actually passing through the sun's atmosphere. And so it's the first man-made object to actually reach out and touch the sun, which is pretty cool. But it's actually destined to fly into the sun. So they're just going to keep orbiting this thing until it can't do it anymore, and it melts or burns up or whatever it is. But they're right now. But I think right now, it's the fastest man-made object in space. So every time it passes the sun, it gets faster and faster and faster, and pretty soon this thing's going to be the fastest man-made object in space if it's not already. So that is for my listeners in Indiana. You're going to have a lot of people there in your state, because everybody is going to be flowing to Indiana, since to me, it looked like it was the only state that's actually almost the entire state is going to be within the total eclipse zone. And so here's an article, one last article here before we leave Jim Hoft from the Gateway Pundit. As the Hoosier state braces for a memorable celestial event, Governor Eric Holcomb has taken a proactive step by declaring a statewide disaster emergency in anticipation of a total solar eclipse on April 8th. The measure is designed to prepare Indiana for the vast number of visitors expected to flock to the state to witness the rare occurrence. The declaration, effective Wednesday, allows Indiana to utilize resources and aid from other states through the Emergency Management Assistance Compact. This compact is a national mutual aid system with which Indiana, along with all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and various American territories, have ratified. Governor Holcomb signed the order to address anticipated needs due to the significant influx of tourists. The EMAC members will share equipment and communication systems to help ensure safety during the eclipse, related surge in tourism. The Indiana Capital Chronicle. So yeah, now you guys are going to know how it feels to be us in Florida, where we deal with tourists every single day, all day long. And in fact, I mean, during the winter months down here, the influx of people is just off the charts. The traffic is noticeably different. The beaches are noticeably different. And then when everybody leaves to go back up north for the summer, then we actually get a break. So now Indiana's going to know how it feels to be Florida for a change. And let me tell you, it is so annoying. Depending on where you live in Indiana, you're going to see some wild stuff. It's so annoying. All the places you like going to are going to be completely packed. All the touristy sites that you like going to are going to be completely packed. The traffic's going to be insane. You can't get to work. You can't get home. It's nuts. So prepare. For my listeners in Indiana, prepare. But it's actually going to be pretty cool. I wish I could be there. That would be pretty awesome to watch a full total solar eclipse. So for my brother that's living there, you actually get to see quite the spectacle. So, all right, ladies and gentlemen, that is all for tonight. Thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to support the show, you can. So you can follow the show on Rumble. Download the show on any podcast platform. Just search up my name, Steven Torriello. And if you want to reach out to me directly, you can get a hold of me, StevenTorrielloShow@gmail.com. The show actually went on a little bit longer than I thought. We had a lot more stuff to get into. Just real quick, because I hate leaving you guys when there's so much stuff to get into. So the Baltimore Bridge collapse, there's going to be a second channel that opens for the Baltimore Bridge. So it's going to be like a secondary channel so they can start getting freighters back in there. So the captain of the port has established a secondary temporary channel on the southwest side of the main Fort McHenry Channel near Hawkins Point for essential commercial vessels. So the secondary temporary channel is marked with lighted federal aids for navigation. Its use is at the discretion of the COTP and limited to daylight hours. So they're actually starting to recover and clear out the wreckage that's down there. They're starting to do sonar mapping, and the images are actually pretty wild from these sonar images. The technology we have now when it comes to sonar is crazy. It almost looks like one of those 3D... well, I guess it's probably the same technology. When you go and get your... what do they call that? With the 3D, when you go and get your baby looked at. Man, I can't think of the name. What is that called? Sonogram or something like that? I don't know. But the technology is just amazing. And you can see in detail what the wreckage looks down there. And I'll actually post this article in my podcast description so you guys can look at the photos. It's actually pretty wild. So that's happening. And then also the freighting company that owns the ship has deemed in a lawsuit not to be responsible for any of the cost of rebuilding the bridge. So essentially in the lawsuit they're saying it's not our fault that this bridge collapsed. I don't know how they think they're going to get away with this one. Whose fault do they think it was? I mean, the bridge didn't collapse on its own. It collapsed because their giant ship ran into it for some reason that I don't even think we still know. Like, what actually happened on that ship? I think it's still being investigated. But before the investigation's even done, they've already come out and said, "Oh, don't blame us. It's not our fault." They're actually asking the judge to cap out the expenses, that their liability expenses, at like $46 million. Think about that. $46 million. The Biden administration, aka the taxpayer, has already dished out $60 million or $60 or $80 million to the project. So give yourselves a pat on the back, taxpayer. Joe Biden and the federal government is, well, spending your money. It's so much easier spending other people's money, man. Well, anyways, all right, so that was a little bit more info I can leave you off with. So again, thank you guys for tuning in. If you want to follow the show on Rumble, and I will talk to you guys here in a little bit. I want you guys to have a good day. Have a great week. God bless you, and God bless America. You guys have a good day. Bye-bye.